This is the Fujifilm X100VI. It is perpetuating the most hyped camera line of the recent years, and I just got mine a few weeks ago, almost 2 years after its release. That should be a proof that my motivations to finally have my own was not to jump on the hype and accumulate views on YouTube, unless I am a terrible business person that do not understand the concept of timing. The internal ND filter, the IBIS, the weather sealing, and the bright 35mm equivalent lens amongst many other key points were the reasons I pulled the trigger on this camera. The promise for a highly capable hybrid camera that can shoot both photos and videos at the same time without compromise was very high, to the point that, on paper at least, it looked like a better, compact, all-in-one package than my Sony a7C II. But the list of specs and how they actually express themselves in real life can sometimes be so different that the promise does not hold up, and after some time using the Fuji X100VI as a daily driver, I can say now that it is probably the case with this camera. It just looked too good to be true, but it doesn't mean that I don't like it, and I might even decide to keep it. I have a lot to unpack, so welcome to this video talking about my experience using the Fujifilm X100VI. Being a photographer that makes videos on YouTube and that also just came to enjoy shooting both stills and little clips here and there when I'm shooting, I want my cameras to be able to shoot both photos and videos. Photography is still my priority, so I don't mind the video side not being the latest and greatest in terms of resolutions or slow motion capabilities. I shoot everything in 4K 24fps, very simple. On paper and in real shooting conditions, the Fuji X100VI can capture beautiful photos and videos. You have 40 megapixel stills and 10-bit 4K footage, so we're all good. Boxes are checked, right? Unfortunately, this is just a final result. And like I just said, I don't need the best video specs. What really matters is the ease of use, the convenience, and just how smooth it is to switch between modes. And before getting this camera, I was not foreign to the fact that it does not have a dedicated switch dial to go from still to movie and back to still. This I knew and I was prepared for. But what makes the switching experience a lot slower and filled with obstacles is the software part. So let me give you a concrete example. After taking a photo and switching to video to grab a clip, I have to press the drive button that, first of all, is quite hard to reach. You kind of need both hands to do that securely. Then I have to go all the way down to the movie mode, or I can also just go up, so there's just a few less clicks to do. Once I am in movie mode, and if I'm out in daylight like most of the time, I activate the ND filter, one of the great features of this camera, by the way. Then what I like to do is acquire focus and lock it so it doesn't move. I do the same for the exposure. I wait the time needed for the camera to settle at a good exposure value and lock it. I do that with the AF lock and AE lock that I have assigned to custom buttons, and now I'm finally ready to start recording. And up to that point it's not too bad, just the lack of a mode switch makes it slower than my Sony camera, but I gain on the fact that it is faster to put on the ND, and also it is internal, so I don't need to have one in my pocket or my bag. But it's when you're done recording and you want to go back to the still mode that the inexplicable happens. For some reason, when you have either of your focus or exposure locked, you cannot access the drive mode. You can press the button as much as you want and it just won't do a thing. First, you need to unlock them using the respective buttons before being able to access the drive mode and go back to taking stills. And I just had fun counting how many clicks you need to come back to the photo mode after recording a video, and it goes up to 6 clicks, while on my Sony cameras it's just like one flick of a switch. And actually I just realized that if you really need to be fast, you could be recording and simply flicking the switch will get you back to the photo mode and the recording and store it properly. Because of that, I started making compromise. I now shoot most of the time in AFS. I think it suits well the kind of slow experience of using this camera. And when I go to the video mode, it removes the need of locking focus because you only acquire it once when starting your video clip. And when I know that AFC is more suited for the thing I'm shooting, like maybe taking photos of my daughter moving, I do switch the focus mode. But Sony shooters, we are really spoiled with the autofocus system we have. The AFC is almost as accurate as AFS, and to be honest, sometimes I don't even lock my focus in video mode because this thing almost never hunts. I mean, as long as you don't have someone suddenly entering your focus zone. That's the kind of thing we are reminded of when we switch to another system, and it just makes me even more grateful for it. The other compromise I do with the Fuji when shooting video is trusting the metering. Unless I'm shooting a scene with a lot of movement, with people passing in the foreground close to the camera, I just don't lock systematically the exposure and hope for the best. When recording like 10-15 seconds of a scene, there has always been a good 6-7 second sequence with no exposure shift, so that's why half of the time I would say I just let the camera do its thing. So all these little quirks that are mostly software related are just filling up a big feeling of frustration, because with the Fuji X100VI and its internal ND filter, decent IBIS and 10-bit colors, we could have a beast of a compact hybrid camera, but it's just being held back by software that I think could and should be fixed. I previously owned a Fuji X-E4, a camera that was released like 4 years before the X100VI, and when I had to play with the video features, I had the exact same problems. I was just hoping that 4 years of development could have led to such simple fixes being made, but we are still stuck there, which is a shame because the potential of the X100VI is currently not fully realized in my opinion. So it's the day after I wrote the script for this very video you're watching, and I'm today here in Miyajima shooting a lot again with the Fuji X100VI, and I found a way to improve a little bit the switch between the movie mode and the photography mode. And what I've been already doing before when in the movie mode is using like the movie optimized control. So basically you override like the physical dials to set up your shutter speed, aperture, etc. Then you set them up through the menus, either with the touch screen or like the rotating dial, the front and back dials. And now I decided to really set up my shutter speed to 1/48 and not have access to it anymore. Also my ISO, I set it at the base ISO, and then I only have the front dial that let me adjust the aperture to match the exposure and to find a good exposure for a given scene. And with that, I don't have to lock my exposure settings because they are not moving. By doing so, I don't have to unlock things before moving back to the photography mode. So it's a lot smoother, but still it's just a pain in the ass to click on that drive button that is here on the body, like located somewhere quite hard to reach. And you have to go in the menu and go up, down to find the photography mode. So it would just be much better if Fujifilm let us use a custom mode to switch between photography and movie. But yeah, it's already a big improvement. And just to add a little bit more limitations to the video specs and the hybrid capabilities of this camera, here comes the video codecs. It's marketed as being able to shoot 6.2K or 4K HQ, downsampling from that 6.2K footage, but both of these setups require a 1.25 times crop. So you are not shooting at a 35mm field of view anymore, but more so 43-ish mm. Okay, so I first thought that I don't care about 6.2K. For me, 4K is already plenty enough, and for all the general public and the platforms these clips end up in, anything above 4K is not necessary, so maybe I could just shoot the regular 4K. Smaller files and the full 35mm field of view sounds fair, but shooting in the regular 4K, even with the bitrate at the maximum, you end up with footage that lacks a bit of details, and you also get some sort of aliasing. Feel free to correct me on that, I am no pro filmmaker, but sometimes the edges of the thing in your frame look a bit off, especially when you have like a grid pattern, you will see some weird things happening. Most probably it can go unnoticed on social media, even on YouTube on a big screen, but when you work with your footage all day and you see that, it's just hard to refrain the little pixel people we have inside us not being frustrated. So once again, on paper it looks very promising, but reality is quite different. Not unusual by any means, but you have to do some compromises, and I think the 4K HQ mode is the most efficient setup that combines quality with slightly smaller files. As a Sony user, one thing that took me some time to understand with Fuji is the dynamic range setting, DR100, 200 and 400. It seems that even some long-time Fuji users are not fully getting this feature completely, and what it actually does is not magically increasing the sensor's dynamic range, but more so protecting highlights. When you use DR200 or DR400, without you noticing, the camera deliberately underexposes the image by 1 or 2 stops to keep highlights from clipping, and then it leaves the shadows back up automatically. And it's not HDR, it's not multiple exposures, it's still one single shot, just exposed darker and then processed back to normal in camera. We could almost qualify that as some sort of computational photography, like an iPhone would do, just at a much more basic, old school level. There's only one exposure, there's no frame stacking, no local tone mapping, no subject separation, no AI decisions. It's just exposing the whole thing darker and lifting the shadows globally. Then Lightroom and probably the other editing softwares read the metadata and show the photos with the rebalanced exposure. And coming from Sony, this was quite tricky to get a hang on, because if you use one of the DR200 or 400 mode, you have to shoot photos factoring in a certain amount of highlight protection. In practice, you may look at a preview on your screen that seems overexposed and clipping in the bright areas that will be rebalanced once you review the shot after taking it. So in the end, know that the Sony or Fuji way of doing is better. There is also no magical setting that suddenly expands the dynamic range of your sensor. I could totally be shooting in DR100, which is basically no level of tonal remapping, and shooting kind of in the same way as I would with my Sony. But I think it is just very important to be aware of, because if you're shooting in DR400 that is already protecting the highlights, and you purposely underexpose on top of this to protect highlights, you will end up with very noisy shadows once rebalanced in post. I still think it's a cool feature because you can shoot based on what you see on screen without having to make like drastic exposure decisions. If it looks good on screen, it might already be catching all the necessary data both in the shadows and the highlights, and also once you are in Lightroom, you will have less work to do on the basic sliders to get the base exposure right, I felt. All in all, it's nothing bad, but it's kind of tricky to really understand correctly, and I would say that the DR400 is probably overkilled. In DR200 you already get a good level of highlight protection with the right amount of shadow rebalancing. In line with what I just discussed, I think the menus and the language used in them is just more confusing than what I'm used to. Like, this IQ section stands for image quality, but inside you find settings like white balance, the film simulation and the tone curve, and they just don't really sound like image quality to me. If I want to be a bit picky, I think the lens is a bit soft for a 40 megapixel sensor. And just to clarify, there seems to be a misconception that high megapixel sensor need a sharper lens. It's more so that with the higher resolution and the ability to punch in more, you are more likely to reveal the limitations of a lens. And I think that the bump in resolution from the 5 to the 6 should have come with an increase in sharpness on the lens side, because in the end you have more megapixels available to explore more crops in post, but you quickly become limited by just the lens sharpness over any lack of resolution. So the resolution upgrade is also one thing that looked good on paper that you cannot really actually make good use of in real life. But after all that, I have to say that I think I ran into most of the problems and limitations I listed before, because I tried using the X100VI a bit too much like it was my Sony a7C II. And I think that's fair, because in my case I wanted to see how both compete and check whether the Fuji can be almost as capable as the a7C II while being a bit more fun to use, having the ND filter, the OVF and the tilty screen. And I think I get it now. This camera includes many key features on the video side, and they made it attractive as a hybrid camera because the tech is there, and Fuji maybe thought, why not putting it in? But they certainly still wanted to make this camera more like photography oriented, and I respect that. As a photo camera, and thanks to some of the features I just mentioned like the OVF, it's a very fun camera to shoot photos with. So the hybrid shooter in me is frustrated, but the photographer is very pleased with the X100VI. I just got myself a little espresso and we can start talking about the good stuff. And we can start with the OVF, so the optical viewfinder. I've been so used to shoot photos with the help of an LCD screen or the viewfinder, which is basically another tiny LCD screen in a dark case, that it is just so refreshing to shoot photos while looking at real life on the other side of the camera. You're not looking at pixels defined by an algorithmic calculation made by the processor in your camera. You see the scene as it is, with frame lines and different markers to remind you about key infos. For me, it's the perfect blend of analog and technology that minimize the misjudgment from the frame lines as they move based on where the camera is focusing. It also brings back some amount of surprise, as what you see in the OVF is not the final image yet. It has room for error, and for the pragmatic guy I am, it's a bit hard to accept, but I find it very fun. When you're not too concerned about the results, you can use the OVF and also change the display of the LCD screen to only show the settings and histogram. So when you're shooting, you have no immediate feedback and no instant gratification. We are still far from shooting proper film, but if you push this little game and decide to review the photos only when you're back at home after offloading the photos to your computer, it can be quite fun and rewarding. And also the internal ND filter, I saw it as the thing that will make this camera the best compact hybrid package. Not quite there yet, as we just talked before, but in photo mode, it's also a great addition. It expands the possibilities, and by just pushing a button, you can reduce the shutter speed, even in decently bright scenarios, and start playing with some motion blur. And with the IBIS, you can have something sharp and have motion from moving things and people around it, or you can let your wrist go loose and incorporate some motion by yourself. This one goes a bit against what I just said, but even though I don't shoot JPEG and don't shoot like Fuji recipes, having good colors and just good looking images in camera can help you being a bit more optimistic about your photos. Basically, if you don't feel like all the photos you take look like crap, I think you are more likely to stay engaged in the process and keep shooting for longer and wanting to shoot more regularly. And I mean, that's the key to success and taking photos you're happy with in the long run. Talking about being engaged and involved in the photography process, this is a camera that needs your full attention when you use it. With its design and the physical dials, you need to spend more time adjusting aperture, exposure compensation, and whatever else to make sure you get the shots. With my Sonys, my custom modes are so dialed that I can shoot without looking at my camera. Between shots, I reset my custom mode by rotating the mode dial back and forth, and I know that I have everything ready for the next shot. And here with the Fuji, it's different. If you decide to shoot at f2 to get some bokeh for a shot, then when comes the next shot, landscape, let's say, you should look down your camera and change your aperture to maybe f5.6. There's just no way to have a basic starting point that works for maybe 80% of the photos that you can go back to with just the flick of a switch. It can make you miss shot for sure, but at the same time it keeps you engaged in the process of taking photos. With the Sonys, not having to worry about my camera settings is great, but when I have a more low pace, low stimuli shooting day, it's easy for my mind to start wandering and forgetting to take photos. And this Fuji X100VI is also so well balanced that you can have it hanging around your neck for hours and you will be 100% fine. Just like a necklace that happens to take pretty nice pictures. The A7C II on the other hand, even when paired to a light lens like the Zeiss 35mm f2.8, weighs roughly the same as the Fuji, but because of the thickness of the body, the balancing of the weight inside it, and the placement of the strap hooks, it will just not stand like upright. And this, when you have the camera around your neck, despite being equally light as the Fuji, is less comfortable because you have the sharp edges of the camera bumping into your body all day. The Fuji stays flat against your torso, which makes it a great camera to carry around every day, a very small detail that makes the difference in the everyday ability of this camera, I would say. One thing that I am yet to properly test and take advantage of is the weather resistance of the Fuji X100VI. Despite being so hyped and for some people being more of a fashion accessory than a camera, they made it quite rugged. Once you set up any sort of filter with an adapter ring in front of the lens, the camera becomes fully weather resistant, which just expands the potential use cases of it and really embody the everyday label it has. It's an everyday camera to the sense that it's a light, easy to carry camera that you can bring with you for your everyday errands, and it is also a camera for every type of day, rainy, snowy, dusty, you name it. So despite lacking on some key departments and failing to fully deliver the promise the Fuji X100VI came with, I think I am seduced. It's a camera I've been reaching to document the everyday mundane stuff and family life happening at home. It's the camera easy to have lying around my desk or the dining table and grab to shoot some pictures of my daughter or just the good light pouring into the apartment. Very surprisingly, knowing my character, it's the camera I accept the quirks it comes with and embark on the fun it is to shoot with on a daily basis. I also recently went on a little family reunion in Bangkok during which photography was not front and center, and for this kind of situation the Fuji was maybe more fun to use and it spent more time with me than if I brought my Sony, I think. That said, whenever I would go on a serious dedicated photo trip or for the very rare paid shoots I have, I would grab my Sony, no hesitation. With them, I can fully focus on everything else but the camera, looking at the light, planning correctly my route, directing talents or whatever, knowing that the camera will deliver. And to come back to the intro and probably the title of this video and just going full circle, yes, I think I fell into the trap of the Fuji X100VI. The attractiveness of the specs and how good it looked on paper made me fall for it, but what I ended up liking the most about it is the other stuff, the thing that even the previous version of this camera were known and cherished for. The fixed lens, the OVF and the compactness that make for a very fun photography experience, now with the addition of decent video capabilities that are more of a plus rather than the center of attention. So, well done Fuji, you even got someone as pragmatic as me falling going for this kind of more romantic camera experience. That said, I think you can still improve on your software, and this should come before surfing on the hype and releasing the X100VI that will for sure go out of stocks in seconds. So I hope that my ramble about this cam was somewhat useful or just entertaining to listen to. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.